Hey, this is Chris from Outbound Terrain. This is my '07 JK, and today we're going to change some coolant hoses. So let's get started. Okay, just a quick overview of what's going on and what we need to do. There's where this hose attaches here to the radiator. These are the ones. That's the one we're going to change, and that's where it goes into the motor right at the inlet. Now, while you're doing this, what you might want to do is change out this thermostat. It's right underneath this plastic housing right here. And while you're doing all this, it'd just be easier because you're going to have this hose off. All right. So the next hose, it's kind of hard to see, and I'll just point it out before we take this thing apart. It's right there. That attaches to the bottom of the block on the passenger side, and the inlet goes right into the radiator right in there. So we're going to pull those two off, and to get to this one you see right here, we're going to have to pull this air box out. Okay, there's the air box. Now with the air box, there's 3 clips we'll take off. We'll get that all out of there so we can get to this hose, which is directly underneath the box. There's 3 clips that hold the air box top on where your air filter is. Sorry guys, I only got one hand here. I don't have anybody to help hold the camera or my GoPro mount. So basically clip here, pull those off. Clip here, same thing. And there's one back in here, so there's 3 total. So those are clipped off, and you should be able to lift this guy out of here. It's not too hard, you just got to get around some of the peripheral wires here, but it comes out of there. And when you get done, I can't do it with one hand. Pull this off and move this whole assembly back out of the way. You can lift it up this way. You shouldn't have to disconnect it up here. You should be able to just pull it out here and move it. So anyways, I lied about that. Yeah, I did have to disconnect this air hose right here, real easy. This guy, disconnect that, and then pull this off, and it goes on the side of your, it's right over here on the side of your top of your box. No big deal, whoopee. So pull that off, pull your filter out, and oh, hey, there's my spare key. There goes my filter. Oh, it missed the pan full of antifreeze. That's good. But anyways, there's the box itself. By the way, that's a pretty cool place to put a spare key in case some knucklehead wants to try to steal your Jeep. And it doesn't get sucked into the motor. So anyways, it just kind of sits down there because it's heavy. So this old guy pulls out. Here's your access. There's 3 grommets down here. See where those are? It just pops out, you know, kind of hacky sack, but I guess that's what they did when they mounted this thing in here. But now you got access. See, that's out. Freaking amateur. There it is. So now you can get to the darn hose. See? Makes it easy. Okay, bottom hose is off. Ready to go. I'm going to clean that little inlet valve there. Or clean that housing off before you put the new hose on. But that's done. So we have to crawl under this thing and get the other one. That's disconnected. We'll do that in a few minutes. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and take off our hose now. Before I do this, attaches there and attaches there. I usually give it a little squeeze. Get some of the antifreeze that's up top out of there. Then I'm going to take the clamps off. Now this one on the rear, on the block side, it's sometimes a little hard to get off. I use a pair of channel locks and kind of come back in here like that. Squeeze that and pull it back. It's easier to twist this hose off. Sometimes these hoses, you know, a little hard to get off. So give it a little twist like that. It comes away from the housing. And another thing, your thermostat is right down in here. You got to unbolt that guy right there. Pretty easy. One on this side, one on this side. And this thing's plastic, and I don't know why. You think they'd put a steel one on here. I don't know why Chrysler did that. But anyways, that's it. The thermostat's in there. If you want to change it, put a new one in there before summertime. And I'm going to change it. The reason I'm doing this, I live in Northern California in the valley here. It gets to be about 110 degrees for summer. It's really hot. So I want to get this done before summertime. You know, it's April right now. We're already starting to get hot and get out of our rainy season. But anyways, it's going to do that. Same over here. Go ahead and loosen these. And I usually pull them back a little bit. It's just easier to get the hose off. So take your top hose off like that. So here's the old one and the new one. Basically what you're going to do is use those 2 clamps, the ones you took off, put on the new hose, and this wire mesh works really good. Wire, it's plastic mesh, works pretty good on the other one. So I transfer this, take this off, and put it over there. It's basically rub guard, and when you get in there, if this moves around, it doesn't put a lot of friction on this pipe itself. It kind of protects it, like a rash guard for a surfer. Same thing. So just change that over, and we'll go to the next step. Okay, top hose is on. There it is right there. That's the new one. Here's the old one. I always look at the ends of these to see how far down they put the clamp on there. That's pretty close to the end. Make sure this is all snug up in here, up against the housing itself, or the inlet on the radiator. And the other end, I use a little, it's kind of wet here, I use a little bit of simple green to put on here. Just kind of lubricate it a little bit. It's kind of slick. So I could get this thing on here. It's a little hard. This one's a little harder. You're gonna have to finagle it on there, but once you get it on there, it's cool. And just check to make sure you've got pretty close to the same distance you want to go. I went a little up from there, but it sealed pretty good, feels good. So we're done there. That's the top. Back again, trying to get that lower radiator hose off. There it is, conveniently located behind the tensioner. Now I've kind of got the phone inverted and I'm laying on my back on a creeper, so this is hard to see. Right there, see how they position those clamps? They're kind of hard to get to on top, and they're kind of hard to get to from the bottom because they're kind of off to the side, to the right, kind of in a horizontal plane. It's hard to get to. So what I'm going to do, they must have done this when this thing was in the factory on a lift. It was easier when it's in the air, trust me, to get up in there and kind of finagle your arm and hand in there. I'm going to get it off. When I put the new one on, I'm going to point it, probably rotate it more to clockwise downward, so next time it's easy to get off, because it's going to be hard to get to. But anyways, I'm going to do that and I'll get back to you. Okay, back. I got the lower radiator hose on under the rig right now. Looking at it, what I did, you know, is there it goes up top to the top. What I did is that this bottom one here, it was kind of hard to get that clamp off. It's been on there since 2007. So I took the clamp off, had a really hard time. This nipple on the end of this lower block is aluminum or steel, so it's a lot nicer. It's a little bit bigger diameter than the top one, where it goes into the radiator on the bottom hose up to the top. So I recommend using a hose clamp like this. This is what they normally use, and it just works a lot better, because if you do this again, man, if you're out on the trail trying to change this thing, trying to get that silly frickin' clamp off of there, I had a really hard time. Another thing, when you take this bottom one out, and I found this out the hard way, you take this bottom hose out and you pull it off that nipple and remove it, you're going to get probably, gosh damn, 1,000 cc's almost. So a liter of, God, it must have seemed like a liter of antifreeze that's drained up in the bottom of the block that needs to drain out. So it's been sitting there, you can't get to it draining the other way. So you're draining the block when you pull this. Just be aware, it's going to come out and have a pan or something underneath there. But other than that, that's the bottom done. I crimped it down, looks good, and moving to the top. So underneath now, while you're under here, go ahead and while you're moving back to take off the block side of that lower radiator hose, close your petcock here. It's called it, actually, it's that was the old school name for it. You know, it's a closure valve, but in the old days, these guys called it a petcock. I have no idea where they came up with that name. Sounds kind of kinky. I'm not that kind of guy. Hey, Bob's going to come over and show us his petcock. That doesn't sound good. Anyways, counterclockwise. I'm right, left as passenger side. Just counterclockwise. Tighten that thing up. Pretty good. Make sure it's snug. And later on, when you put in your fluid, just that's where it drains right there. Make sure that that thing's tight. It's not, you know, when you heat it up and do your heat test when you're driving it around to see if you got any leaks, coolant leaks, make sure that nothing's coming out of this thing, but nice and snug. Not too snug. It's plastic, like radiator inlet plastic. I don't know why I don't like plastic. I'd rather have the old school aluminum style, but I guess that's not going to happen. Everything's plastic nowadays, for Pete's sake. Anyways, that's that. Moving on. Okay, back. Top hose is on and sealed up pretty good. Like I said, I'm not a real fan of those clamps that Chrysler put on there. I just did this on my TJ over there, and I used all just hose clamps. Took off all those crappy ones. That's a 2000. Of course, they were pretty corroded, and the hoses were pretty bad. But anyways, yeah, just change those out if you can, if you want to. Other than that, that's it. Top's buttoned up here. We're going to put some fluid in here and let her run for a little while and burp her. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Okay, once you got all your hoses on, go ahead and top her off with the antifreeze all the way to the top as much as she can take. And then I'll show you how to get more in there after she's topped off. Okay, she's all topped off. Ready to go at the fluid level right up there. Now we're going to put more in there. That's just to kind of get us started. I was talking about burping this thing. You want all the air out of the system if you can. So what you can do is squeeze this hose over here. Give that a squeeze and kind of watch the bubbles there come out. Oops, a little too much. But anyways, that was kind of a vigorous squeeze there. But you can see that gets a lot of the air out of the system just to start. Then basically you're going to start her up and just add fluid slowly to get it up to the level. Then you can cap it off and well, I'm going to do a fluid test and see if we got any leaks here here in a minute. But I wanted to talk about antifreeze a little bit. Whenever you're working with this stuff, always wear gloves. It's bad for you. If you're under the car, under the rig, it's not a car. It's a Jeep. Wear safety goggles. Okay? You want that stuff in your eyes, mucous membranes in your eyes or anything. Also, it's very toxic to pets and animals and people. So don't leave this stuff lying around like that, especially if you have a dog or a cat or anything, because that'll, if they get that in their system, it'll kill them, basically. A very small amount. It doesn't take much. Okay, after you have all your radiator fluid in there and popped off, put the cap back on and let her run for a few and take her for a ride. So pretty much wrapped up, ran her up to temperature with the cap on. So right now up to temperature, looks pretty good. No leaks, check for leaks, nothing going on there. I'll turn her off for a while, let the system kind of equalize and pressurize, then I'll check the fluid level again and add as needed. But other than that, pretty clean job, didn't take too long. So new hoses, new radiator flush and fluid, antifreeze, and we're looking good, ready for the summer wheeling season. Well, that's it. Got her all wrapped up, done. Runs great, no overheating. And, you know, I hope this video helped you guys out a little bit. I wanted to go into a little more detail, but I kind of had to cruise through it pretty quick. So at least I hope you got the main points. There'll be more videos. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Just getting started, fired up about it. Any questions, leave them in the comments. And I'm shouting at the camera. Anyways, you guys have a wonderful day. This is Chris from Outbound Terrain, and I'll be seeing you.